Chapter 361. Are humans our saviors? Right, Noah. When did you arrive? Gilgamesh asked after introducing Noah to the other Eternals. I came to speak with Ajak. As for why I'm here, ask Ajak, Noah said, dropping from the sky and landing lightly on the ground. All eyes turned to Ajak. Her gaze was fixed on the card in Noah's hand. The card had just transformed from a black hole, identical to the void she had seen in the demon god's hand during the confrontation with Arishem. That similarity sent a dozen questions through Ajak's mind at once. Could the demon god who had dueled Arishem really have been Noah? The idea didn't shock her as much as it puzzled her. Perhaps this was what Noah had meant when he spoke of power strong enough to stand against the Celestials. Ajak! Ajak! Gilgamesh barked, startling her out of her reverie. She blinked and looked at him, confusion clouding her face. What? Gilgamesh frowned. What's wrong? You've been out of it ever since we arrived. What are you thinking about? He had noticed she was drifting off more and more. Ajak hesitated. Telling the others about the Celestials now might ruin the mood, or worse, cause panic. For a moment, she weighed secrecy against the need for honesty. Then she took a breath, a determined light in her eyes. She would not hide it any longer. Arishem the judge came to see me, she said. Her voice was composed, but each word landed like a stone in the gathered circle. Gilgamesh's brow tightened. He could tell there was more. What about him? He discovered our intention to betray the Celestials. What? The revelation hit every Eternal present. Faces went pale, the room filled with murmurs. Arishem found out about us? Then we're finished, aren't we? Kingo shouted, raking a hand through his hair. He began to pace, panic bubbling over. Clutching Karen's shoulder, he cried, Karen, we're done. Let's go, now. While there's still time, let's get our affairs in order. Okay, sir, Karen stammered, dizzy from his shaking. Kingo, calm down. Gilgamesh snapped, striding forward. He grabbed Kingo by the arms, forcing him to release Karen, then held him by the shoulders and shook him until Kingo pleaded for mercy. I've calmed down, Kingo panted. Gilgamesh let go and turned to Ajak. So what now? If Arishem knows, hasn't our plan failed? Ajak met his gaze. No, not yet. Arishem cannot come to Earth quickly. She explained what they all already knew, but seldom spoke of. The Celestials were spread thin, always engaged in creating worlds and expanding the universe. Even a powerful Celestial at the edge of the cosmos like Arishem could not simply abandon his duty and appear on Earth in an instant. In the film, Arishem had taken time to return to Earth as well. So we still have time, Gilgamesh said. How much can we do with that time? Druig asked coolly, arms crossed. He looked at Ajak. Even if he's not here yet, that's only a slow death. We can't figure out how to defeat a Celestial in a few days or weeks. They all nodded. None of them, except Ajak, had ever actually met a Celestial. Most of their knowledge came from ancient texts and memories buried in their genes. Powerful, instinctive, but not a practical blueprint for overthrowing a Celestial. The brief window before Arishem's return might be enough for last preparations, but not for a true solution. Worry and helplessness shadowed every face. Ajak looked around at them and spoke again. I told you there was a way to deal with the Celestials. That way is standing right in front of you. She pointed to Noah. A stunned silence followed. Gilgamesh and Thena stared in disbelief. The others exchanged shocked glances. A human? Our savior? Could a human really offer a method against the Celestials? Yes, Noah, Ajak said firmly. Noah met their scrutiny with a faintly raised eyebrow, but said nothing. He slid the card back into his backpack, as if it were nothing. But he's only human, Kingo protested. He had spent a lifetime among humans and entertained only a low opinion of their powers. Even the famed superheroes of old were novelty to him. Ajak ignored the skepticism. Arishem didn't just come to warn us, he came to pass judgment. He intended to judge us right then, but Noah stopped him. He drove Arishem back. Noah said nothing to contradict her. The calm in his face steadied her. Around them, disbelief rippled into something between hope and fear. What? Chapter 362, Alisum's reaction. This human in front of me, able to repel the Celestials? The Eternals all wore stunned expressions again, as if they had been making this face all day. Arishem the judge's current visit is only an avatar. Whether he can be defeated will only be decided when we confront his true body, Noah said, folding his arms. From the way he looked, Noah believed he could handle one or two celestials without much trouble. Anything beyond that was uncertain. Avatar. When Noah said that, everyone realized Ajak's earlier words might have been true. Noah, hold on a moment, Ajak said after casting a quick glance around. She rose from the lone chair in the church and moved over to the injured villagers. Arishem the judge's power had transformed the area around Ajak into a vast alternate dimension, but the violent aftershocks of his clash with Darkstar Thresh had pierced that pocket reality and leaked energy back into real space. Fortunately, the leaked energy only caused a concussive blast around the church. Most of it had been absorbed by Darkstar Thresh. Had that not happened, the explosion would have spread far beyond the village. The villagers' injuries were superficial but dangerous if left untreated. Ajak crouched beside the wounded and held her hand above their cuts. A golden sigil appeared on her palm, and cosmic energy, laden with healing power, began to weave itself into flesh and bone. The wounds, torn by falling beams and sharp debris, closed visibly under the stream of restorative energy. "Go home and rest. You'll recover fully soon," she told them. The villagers stared in amazement at the miracle and offered their gratitude. At her signal, they left to recuperate, and the rest of the crowd gradually returned to their tasks. "Noah, how did you do that?" "I didn't expect you to be so powerful," Gilgamesh said, stepping closer while Ajak worked. "Be honest. How much of yourself were you using when we sparred last time?" Noah rubbed his chin and said, "About 30%. He meant his innate power, without runes or gems. He'd relied only on the wind technique and magic enhancement when he'd fought Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh didn't buy his modesty. He wasn't accusing Noah of lying. He simply thought Noah was downplaying things. "Stop and think. You can stand up to the Celestials, and you use 30% on me? Maybe not even 1%. Noah just shrugged at Gilgamesh's disbelief. The other Eternals kept their distance. Apart from Gilgamesh and Tina, most of them didn't know Noah. More importantly, any being capable of contending with their creators inspired a mixture of awe and wariness. Ajak returned to the crowd and fixed her gaze on Noah. "Noah, is there something you wanted to ask your visitor?" "I want to ask you about the deviants," Noah said. Edge of the boundless universe. At the edge of the vast universe, an unknown frontier beyond what almost all civilizations could reach, a colossal god stood in silence. His form was like armor forged from stars and cosmic dust, radiating a majesty that felt older than time. Veins of red matter flowed through cracks in that armor like nebula. Countless pinpricks of light twinkled within. 6 eyes on his face burned with stellar light. This was Arishem the Judge, the Red Celestial, standing at the very boundary of existence. This was his true body, not the avatar he had deployed on Earth. Above his outstretched palm, a new star was slowly taking shape. Starlight pooled and condensed in his hand, forming a brilliant, incandescent sphere that bathed the surrounding void in heat and life. Then, as that star neared birth, an unexpected fluctuation rippled through Arishem's vast, normally stable energy field. It was a rare, almost imperceptible disturbance, but it was enough to interrupt the steady flow of cosmic energy feeding the nascent star. With its energy supply cut, the semi-formed star's internal reactions collapsed into chaos. Under extreme compression, its core surged to unimaginable temperatures and pressures, triggering a violent release, a supernova. The flash illuminated the dark edge of the universe. The supernova also sent out a deadly gamma-ray burst, a focused torrent of impact that streaked away into space. Its lethal range extended for 50 light-years. Only the desolation of the universe's rim prevented it from wiping out civilizations. A star that Arishem had created earlier lay in the gamma-ray's path. The burst struck it mercilessly, driving its internal reactions out of control and igniting another supernova. Luckily, that secondary explosion did not produce its own gamma-ray burst, averting an even larger catastrophe. Arishem watched without visible distress. The energy fluctuation had originated from the change on Earth. The avatar he'd sent to punish Ajak had been consumed by a powerful enemy, and that disturbance had echoed back to his true body, setting off the chain reactions. The supernova didn't harm him. He simply halted his work, lowered his hands, and turned his 6 eyes toward a distant, specific point, as if he could peer through countless galaxies and fix his gaze on a single blue planet named Earth. Death Omen Star? He murmured. Chapter 363, The Wounded on Mars. Death Omen Star. What an ominous name. After the shadow clone was devoured, its experiences had been transmitted back to the original. The clone had moved to punish Ajak, been intercepted by an envoy who called himself the Death Omen Star Envoy, and then been overwhelmed and consumed by that envoy's power. Aurelion the judge replayed those memories again, trying to discern the true nature of this new adversary. Something about the envoy's ability suppressed his clone-like existence. In raw power, the two seemed comparable, but Aurelion's clone had no resistance. It had been easily devoured. That suppressive effect made Aurelion uneasy, and the unknown title, Death Omen Star, sharpened his concern. He had never heard of a Death Omen Star in any report from the multiverse. If it were a major celestial power or an established intercosmic organization, other celestials would have signaled its existence, yet nothing reached him. If the Death Omen Star was truly a formidable entity in other universes, why had no one alerted him? The possibility that it was a local, dangerous force on Earth grew more troubling. And if that envoy truly had the power to consume shadowy copies of celestials, the consequences could be dire. Tiamat, the new god destined to be born on Earth, might not be able to emerge unscathed. Aurelion looked toward that distant corner of space and knew he had to act. The Eternals were fragmenting, loyalties had frayed, and betrayal had begun to show. Worse, the Death Omen Star Envoy was lurking on Earth. Under those conditions, Tiamat's birth would be perilous. Even if the newborn god manifested, surviving the envoy's attention seemed unlikely. Earth lay too far from Aurelion's current station at the edge of the universe. Even with his power, travel would take time he might not have. His first decision was pragmatic: stabilize the chaotic region he was already near, an area still reeling from a supernova and a gamma-ray burst, then turn his attention to the solar system and the matters there, the Eternals and this enigmatic envoy. As he was about to move, a flicker of awareness halted him. A voice, more like a single, desperate prayer, crossed countless light years and entered his perception. Great Aurelion the judge, please guide me. What should I do? Intrigued, Aurelion traced the source of the plea. It came from the solar system, from near Mars. He focused his will and descended toward that signal, where he found an Eternal sitting cross-legged on the barren red soil. The Eternal was naked, scarred, and motionless, eyes closed as if resting. Of the Eternals from that system, aside from the dead Phastos, only Icaris had not remained on Earth. After being repelled by Noah, Icaris had faked his death and fled. He had flown to Mars at tremendous speed, escaping a scene of conflict with injuries so severe he could barely move. On arrival, he had nothing but the desolation of the planet to tend his wounds. Relying on the Eternal's prodigious regenerative capacity and the cosmic energy that flowed through him, Icaris slowly mended. The stresses of his flight had burned away his clothes. They had disintegrated into the void. Days passed, and his wounds neared healing, but his mind remained unsettled. After leaving Earth, he had lost his bearings. Ajak and the others might already be moving to prevent the day of God's manifestation. Icaris felt powerless to stop them. If the conflict had been only with Ajak and the rest of the Eternals, he might have stood a chance. He could have used his influence to sway allies. But the enigmatic human who had driven him from Earth was far beyond his ability to defeat. That person's power had placed him on Mars. It was a power Icaris could not match, nor could he predict whether more Eternals would later oppose him. So he sat, confused and uncertain, and prayed to the one he still honored as deity, Aurelion the judge. He begged for guidance, for strength. As his prayer left him, a presence folded down upon Mars. Icarus opened his eyes to a sudden surge of power. The Martian plane around him shimmered with golden energy. Threads of light unfurled and wove themselves into a vast, dark cosmic tapestry, and the ground beneath him dissolved into that space. In an instant, the barren surface of Mars was gone. Icarus found himself suspended within a woven cosmos of golden threads, floating in a newly formed pocket of starry void. Chapter 364, Elysium. Icarus, you go fight Darkstar Thresh. Me? Icarus had launched himself from the barren surface of Mars and found himself in a pitch-black pocket of cosmic void. When his foothold vanished beneath him, he instinctively activated flight and hovered in midair. In front of him, golden filaments began to weave themselves into being, assembling into a majestic god body. Aurelion. The name appeared in his mind as soon as the red celestial took form. When Aurelion the judge descended, a powerful celestial presence washed over Icarus. The blackness around them seemed studded with sudden stars, as if the void itself acknowledged the judge's arrival. "Eternal Icarus, why are you here?" Aurelion's voice echoed, vast and calm. "You know my name?" Icarus asked, surprised to hear it so plainly. "The records of every Eternal are contained in my memory," Aurelion replied. Icarus nodded, still a little stunned by the judge's sudden appearance. He recovered quickly and got straight to the point. "Aurelion the judge, Ajak is betraying the Celestials. She intends to collude with the humans and disrupt the coming day of emergence. Her actions threaten the future of all the Eternals and violate the will of the Celestials. I request you intervene and punish Ajak." He added carefully, "The other Eternals don't know. Ajak is the main instigator." He emphasized that because he was worried Cersei might be implicated. "I am aware of this," Aurelion said, and Icarus flinched. The judge already knew of Ajak's treachery. "But I cannot come to Earth at present, Eternal Icarus. This task will fall to you." Before Icarus could respond, Aurelion had issued his command. The judge had noticed an Eternal on Earth who had not betrayed them and elected to send Icarus back to delay Ajak and buy time until Aurelion could arrive. "What, me against an Eternal and that human? I can't win," Icarus protested. "There's a particularly powerful human on Earth," Icarus admitted, almost embarrassed. "I'm not his match. I left Earth for Mars to recover from my wounds." Aurelion scanned Icarus and found the truth in the Eternal's battered form. "That is not a problem. I will grant you power, enough to contend with them." He did not wait for argument. Aurelion raised a hand and pointed. A torrent of cosmic energy, a golden flood, poured from his fingertip toward Icarus. Against the small bulk of the Eternal, it looked like an ocean poured into a bottle. The energy slammed into Icarus, threatening to overwhelm him. "Ah!" Icarus roared. Though sound shouldn't carry in a vacuum, the golden sea provided a medium, and his cry rolled through the shimmer of energy. He felt his body shredded and reassembled as wounds healed and flesh knitted back with a force that reshaped him. Cosmo energy threaded through him, fortifying bone, muscle, and spirit. Aurelion stopped the flow and waited while Icarus absorbed what he could. The judge had not run out of power. He had measured the limit Icarus could accept without being torn apart by excess. The golden ocean shrank as Icarus drew it in, finally disappearing into him. When the light faded, Icarus stood clad in blue eternal battle armor, not the loose, improvised set the Earthbound Eternals wore, but a specially wrought suit forged by Aurelion himself. It fit like a second skin, more resilient and far more efficient at channeling cosmic energy. Icarus opened his eyes. 2 golden stars flared into being as his irises lit, then twin columns of brilliant light blasted from him and lashed upward into the void. The beams pierced the darkness like lances driven to the edges of the universe. The sudden outpouring was a release of excess energy. Though dramatic, it left him spent and needing only a brief rest to recover. Aurelion had always endowed the Eternals with the means to regenerate energy, but until now, Icarus's personal cap had been narrow. "When I created the Eternals, I gave them an endless well of cosmic energy tied to their longevity," Aurelion said. "Until now, your usable cap was limited. I have extended it." Icarus felt it. The difference was enormous. Where he had once operated within a small reserve, he now had space to draw far more power. Aurelion explained it plainly. Consider his old cap at 100. It had effectively been raised to 5,000. He was infinitely stronger than before. "Be cautious when you return to Earth," Aurelion warned. "Be wary of the human you fought earlier, and watch the power of the Infinity Stones." As he spoke, the judge detected a trace of Infinity Stone power tangled within Icarus, a faint, mutable wisp of energy that could influence the Eternal at any moment. The warning hung between them like a cold wind. Icarus stood taller in his new armor, the echo of the golden light still settling in his bones. He had been empowered and tasked. Return to Earth, put a stop to Ajak, and stand against whatever alliance she formed, however dangerous the human she had allied with, however strange the influence of the stones. Chapter 365. Win the Resurrection Match, the Infinity Stones. After releasing the explosively growing cosmic energy within him, Icarus slowly bowed his head. Before he could steady himself, Erisham, the judge, spoke again. The Infinity Stones, the most powerful artifacts in the universe. I suspect the stone that human left in his body is the Mind Stone, one of the 6. The Mind Stone? Icarus repeated, frowning deeply, his expression grave. He had heard of the Infinity Stones before. Ajak had once mentioned them, though he hadn't paid much attention then. But now, hearing that a human had left the power of the Mind Stone inside him sent a chill through him. The Mind Stone, by its name alone, it suggested control over minds. If Erisham hadn't intervened, next time they met, Icarus might have become a puppet, losing himself entirely. Erisham, what should I do, since our opponent wields an Infinity Stone? Icarus asked humbly. While the Infinity Stones are immensely powerful, a god's nature gives some resistance to their influence, Erisham replied. After I grant you my power, you will gain a degree of resistance to the Mind Stone. This won't make you immune, he added. It only prevents you from being immediately controlled by the Mind Stone. Your primary mission on Earth is to do everything you can to delay Ajak and their plan until I arrive personally. I understand. Icarus drew a deep breath, nodded, and a golden light flickered in his eyes. I will do everything I can to stall them until you come. Very good. Erisham nodded. Then his form began to break into golden lines that dissolved into the cosmic backdrop. Seconds later, Icarus found himself back on Mars, his naked body now clad in blue battle armor. Though he had only been gone a moment, the changes in him felt immense. Icarus hovered above the red dust, then looked down. His eyes flared with brilliant light. Boom! 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 Beams of golden cosmic energy ripped across the Martian surface, carving deep furrows and sending deafening roars through the thin air. Wherever the beams struck, the red sand vaporized, leaving long scars and sending up rolling clouds of dust. On Mars, with its low gravity, those dust storms would take a long time to settle. The cosmic rays branded trails more than 100 meters long into the wasteland. Future explorers from Earth would find a new, unexplained mystery on Mars. Icarus looked at the devastation he'd made and felt a rush of satisfaction at how much stronger he had become. Then he looked up, his gaze piercing toward Earth. Earth, Ajak, and that hateful human. Just wait. I'm coming back, he muttered, voice hard with determination. The cosmic energy around him swelled. In an instant, he became a golden streak, launching into space at unimaginable speed. He vanished into interstellar darkness, leaving only a faint trail. At the edge of the universe, Erisham watched Icarus depart and nodded to himself. With this eternal interfering, Ajak's plan would likely be delayed. Perhaps by the time he arrived on Earth, Tiamat would still be alive. He turned his attention back to the chaos before him. The aftermath of 2 stellar explosions had thrown the galaxy he had tended into disarray. Stardust drifted through warped orbits, planetary paths were askew. Normally, supernovae are natural events Erisham would seldom interfere with, but these explosions had been caused by external tampering during the galaxy's creation, and he had to act to restore order. Gathering his power, he began to work toward returning the galaxy to its former balance. Icarus wins the resurrection match. Meanwhile on Earth, Noah and Ajak, along with other Eternals, were discussing matters at a new house. They had left the ruins of the bombed church and gathered around a table. A few Eternals who knew Noah sat beside him, the rest opposite. Noah tapped his fingers on the tabletop as he spoke. Noah, you're looking for traces of the Deviants? Ajak asked. Yes, you Eternals have fought the Deviants for so long, so I came to ask you, Noah said, glancing around and letting his gaze linger on the Eternals opposite him. They watched him in return. Cersei and Kingo, among others, were curious how a human could be so strong. Gilgamesh and Noah's familiarity with one another suggested something untold, but with Noah present, the others held back from prying. We have indeed battled the Deviants for ages, one of the Eternals said. They've become active on the surface again recently, and one of our own has already been killed by them. Hearing this, the Eternals in the room showed muted grief. I know about that, Noah replied. He reached into his belt and casually set a small projector on the table. It flickered to life, throwing video and several photographs onto the wall. Chapter 366. Introduce. Noah produced a small projector from the belt of nanorobots at his waist and set it on the table. In truth, the nanorobots assembled the device as his hand reached for it. The moment the projector settled, it threw up a crisp light screen, and several photos and a video began to play. The footage and images were the same ones Lysandra had pulled from Chicago's surveillance earlier, clear shots of deviants chasing Phastos's vehicle. The Eternals around the table watched in silence, confusion crossing their faces. None of them had seen these particular deviants before, so they didn't recognize the creatures at first. When Noah pointed to the screen and explained, their expressions hardened. "These are the deviants who killed your companion," he said, addressing Ajax and the others. "What?" someone blurted. "Where did this video come from?" another asked. Noah let them study the images, as if to commit them to memory. "It's surveillance footage taken near your companion's home," he said. "If those deviants absorbed Phastos's power, they will only become stronger and more dangerous. I came to ask if you Eternals have any way to find them." Ajax wanted to ask how Noah knew the deviants had drained Phastos's cosmic energy, but she swallowed the question. With the things she'd already seen of Noah, especially how he'd fought the Celestials, such knowledge from him no longer seemed surprising. "The member who tracked deviants before was Phastos," Ajax said quietly. "He's dead now, but some of the equipment used to detect deviant traces is still aboard our ship." "Oh, right," Ajax added, remembering. "Noah, I haven't introduced everyone yet." She went around the table, pointing to each Eternal and giving their names. She indicated two women, one tall and one short. "This is Circe and this is Sprite. You met them in New York." "Hello," Circe and Sprite said together. Ajax then pointed at an Eternal with an Indian appearance. "This is Kingo. He's a major star on Earth." Beside him stood a young man, Ajax introduced as Karun. Karun is human, like Noah, and serves as Kingo's assistant. Kingo nodded to Noah. Karun brought his hands together in a traditional greeting before speaking softly. "This is Druig," Ajax continued. "He's essentially the manager of this village." Druig, withdrawn as ever, gave Noah a curt nod. Next, Ajax indicated Makari and, using sign language so Makari could follow, said, "This is Makari. She's deaf and mute. You'll need sign language to talk with her." "And these two," Ajax said, waving toward the pair across from her, "you should already know." She pointed to Gilgamesh and Thena. Noah introduced himself in turn. "Hello, everyone. I'm Noah." He signed a greeting to Makari as well. He'd learned a bit of sign language before arriving and picked it up quickly. After the introductions, Noah asked Ajax, "You've told them about the Celestials' revitalization on Earth, right?" She nodded. "Yes, they all know." "So when do you plan to act?" Noah pressed. Ajax surveyed the faces around her before answering. "After we deal with Phastos's death, we'll begin. We have to move against the Deviants and the Celestials." She spoke with a firmness that tried to mask how little time she felt they had. Ajax had doubts about this particular team. Druig, she knew, was not fully supportive. Their relationship had become strained, and she'd sent Makari to persuade him, but Erisham the judge's sudden arrival had interrupted any resolution. And Kingo and Sprite still bore loyalty to Icarus. Kingo treated Icarus like an older brother, and Sprite's affection for Icarus was no secret. In short, the group had fractures and wasn't yet fully reliable, but Ajax had no better option than to act while she worked to mend those rifts. Erisham's arrival made the clock feel shorter than ever. "Ajax, is there anything else we need to do about Phastos?" Kingo asked, confused. Ajax's voice softened. "Phastos is dead. He'd integrated into human society, so we must hold a human funeral for him." Chapter 367. Incoming Ajax decided they would hold a funeral for Phastos, even though the Eternals had no such human custom. Phastos had lived among humans and formed deep emotional bonds. Out of respect, Ajax wanted a human-style farewell. "Makari, go back to the Domo. Bring Phastos's body and the deviant detection device," Ajax said. Makari nodded, pushed back her chair, and vanished with a whoosh. Her speed was so great that most people only caught a blur. Of the Eternals present, only Icarus and Circe could track her clearly. Noah could as well. He couldn't match her pace, but his vision and reactions were sharp enough to follow. Watching her, he thought her faster than Quicksilver in the stories he knew, though that was tempered by how early Quicksilver's power had been and how his stamina failed under prolonged exertion. Makari, by contrast, could race across continents without so much as a ragged breath. She had circled most of the planet and returned to the domo with no visible fatigue. Noah felt it was a display of the Eternal's superior physiology. Makari returned in less than a minute, carrying a bronze coffin that held Phastos's body. The 2-meter coffin looked almost comically large in the arms of the comparatively slight speedster, but it was no burden for her. She set it gently in a corner and then signed to Ajak. The detector hadn't been taken yet. Wait, she'd go back. Ajak nodded. Makari vanished again and came back with a wrist-like device cradled in her hand. She handed it to Ajak and resumed her place. Ajak turned the bronze band in her hands. It had been unused for centuries. Without Phastos, there was no one left to maintain such relics. Noah watched it with interest. To him, it looked like a plain bronze wristband. He had not yet learned the finer points of eternal technology. He had recorded some of Phastos's protective systems recently, but had not had the time to study them. Ajak slipped the band onto her wrist and began to channel cosmic energy into it. Slowly, the etched patterns along the metal brightened, a faint glow spreading as the device awakened. Relief softened Ajak's expression. "Noah," she said, "this is what we use to find deviants." She traced the band's surface and flicked her finger along the etchings. A golden, radar-like screen projected above the wristband. "Years ago, we used this to track deviant signatures," Ajak explained as the golden display hummed to life. "Any red dot means a deviant. If they appear, that's where they are." Noah had just lifted an eyebrow when Kingo called out, "Ajak, look at the radar." Ajak glanced up. The projected pointer swept the area and then lit several red dots, multiple contacts, and all of them were closing fast. "Deviants," Ajak said, voice hardening. "They found us." Gilgamesh slammed his palm on the table as he stood. "We need to get everyone out, now." Cersei turned to Druig. "Druig, hide the villagers. Move them to safety." Druig watched the radar, weighing the approach vectors a heartbeat, then his pupils flared with a golden light. With a simple, practiced sweep of will, he touched each villager's mind. Hands stopped mid-task. People turned as if pulled by a single rope and ran for the nearest shelter. The largest building, once a church, had already been destroyed. The wooden houses remaining weren't ideal protection, but they were better than nothing. The priority was to drive the deviants off and keep the villagers alive. "Everyone, prepare for battle," Ajak ordered. "Repel the deviants." The Eternals moved without hesitation. Some took positions along the perimeter, others readied their powers. Noah watched them settle into the rhythm of command and response and felt the weight of the moment. They were practiced at this, but so were the deviants. The golden dots on the projection kept growing brighter, nearer, an incoming storm. Chapter 368, Battle of the Eternals. When Ajak gave the command, the Eternals quickly assembled outside the Druid's room. The villagers were gone. The Druid had taken control of them and hidden them away. The Eternals had shed their civilian clothes for battle armor. They were ready for the deviants, and after losing one of their own, their calm had hardened into a hot, bristling rage. A dozen deviants wouldn't have satisfied them. They wanted blood. Kingo's assistant, Karin, crouched in a shadowed corner, camera-trained. He filmed every angle of the Eternals in their armor, wanting to capture their heroic bearing, the set of a jaw, the flex of a hand, the ripple of cosmic energy along a forearm. But when he pointed the lens at Noah, something odd happened. On the camera's display, Noah's outline blurred into a wash of light, as if the image were being pixelated automatically. Karin fiddled with the focal length and angle, but nothing cleared. Noah noticed the filming, but said nothing. He rose slowly off the ground and hovered into the sky. From above, he scanned the forest in the direction Ajak's detector had flagged. The Amazon's canopy was thick and impenetrable, but a disturbance gave the location away. A roiling scatter of birds bursting up from one patch of trees as if something monstrous was pushing beneath the leaves. The deviants were under that spot. He sent out a silent probe of magic, confirmed what he suspected, and drifted back toward the clearing. Rather than rejoin Ajak and the others, he hung back at the edge and watched. He didn't intend to intervene, not yet. He'd seen these battles on film a dozen times. He wanted to see how they performed in reality. At the front stood the combat Eternals. Not every Eternal was a frontline fighter. Some were suits for support. Ajax, Circe, Sprite, and the Druid remained at the rear. Fastos, who might normally have been near the support group, lay in a coffin in the hut, gone. In the movies, Circe could be a combatant because the leader's orb amplified her power to transform living beings, much like Noah's whimsy, but Ajax was still alive, and the enhancement hadn't occurred. So Circe stayed back. Up front, Kingo, Makari, Gilgamesh, and Thena took position, their golden cosmic energy already pooling. Golden sigils glowed across Kingo's hands as he pressed his index and middle fingers together, compressing energy into tight, searing spheres. His gift was to throw cosmic blasts from his palms. He could charge them into concentrated hits, something like a war version of a Rasengan. Makari stood poised and lithe, stretching her legs and ready to sprint. When the deviants came, she would strike in a storm of speed. Gilgamesh conjured a massive gauntlet, slamming his fist into his palm until the sound rang. He loved nothing more than to meet a brute of a deviant in blunt force. Thena, often mistaken by ancient humans for Athena when she appeared in her platinum armor, created a golden spear and a shield of cosmic energy and took up a classic balanced stance. A deep rumble rolled through the trees. The undergrowth crashed, and then 3 giant deviants smashed through the jungle and stood before them. They were enormous, shoulder heights over 3 meters, lengths pushing 5 meters and more. Kingo's mouth quirked in surprise. "Why are they so big?" he muttered. They resembled 3 living tanks. Even the Eternals behind the front line exchanged worried looks. Something about these deviants felt off. Karan hunched lower, only his camera lens exposed. The deviants saw their ancient enemies and answered with furious roars before surging forward. The lead creature looked like a massive minotaur, the size of an ox but far worse. 2 pairs of curved horns rammed out from its skull, a hideous, scheming face below them, and 2 pairs of huge gorilla-like arms that thundered against the earth as it charged. It pounded the ground and left fissures where its fists struck. Gilgamesh barreled forward to meet it. Strength types were his favorite opponents. He wanted nothing more than to punch his signature into a deviant's face. He flexed and charged, gauntleted fist drawn back to smash. A shadow flicked by at blinding speed. Makari streaked past Gilgamesh, but she wasn't headed for the Minotaur. She dove for a lithe, lizard-like deviant whose sleek scales hid rows of tiny, writhing tentacles that slipped through the gaps. Its most disturbing feature was a mouthful of needle teeth, from which a dripping emerald ichor seethed onto the ground, eating the earth with hissing puffs of white steam. The third deviant, feline and jaguar-like, leapt with coiled menace. Kingo and Thena met its gaze and moved together. Energy gathered in Kingo's hands until it crackled. Whoosh! The sound of compressed power split the air as 2 golden blasts shot from Kingo's fingertips, trailing light as they tore toward the jaguar form. Chapter 369, In Battle. The fight erupted quickly, Gilgamesh's front flaring first. This portion of the battle was a straight clash of force against force. The massive body of the horned deviant, like a small mountain, crashed toward him. Its enormous arm rose high, and the momentum of its charge turned the descent into a thunderous strike. Gilgamesh didn't back down. His style had always been the same: meet power with power. He drew a breath, his muscles coiling like steel, concentrating strength in his arms. Cosmic energy gathered in his hands, making the golden arm guards on his forearms gleam brighter. With a shout, he met the deviant's blow head-on, fists slamming into that massive arm. The impact was deafening. An invisible shockwave radiated outward, shaking the air and throwing sand and stone in all directions. The earth under their feet quivered as if struck by a giant hammer. Spectators scrambled to dodge the flying debris. Gilgamesh felt the recoil push him back, his feet carving furrows in the ground, but his stance held like a rock. The horned deviant staggered too, taking a few steps back, but its sheer bulk left it little worse for wear. It shook its head and roared, fury burning in its chest. Gilgamesh steadied himself and saw the deviant charge again. He cracked his knuckles. This foe was tough, but the challenge thrilled him. He hadn't had a proper fight in years. This was only a warm-up. He strode forward, eager, and they collided again, the ground constantly reverberating with their blows. On the other flank, the speedster Makari was already engaged with a bizarre, aberrant race lizard. When the giant reptile saw an extremely fast figure streaking toward it, it spat a stream of green venom. Makari twisted and turned with lightning agility, evading the spray. The venom hit the ground and sent up corrosive green smoke, eating a shallow pit into the earth. Makari darted in front of the lizard and began to circle it. Her motion whipped up a sandstorm, trapping the creature and blinding it. She moved like a blur, waiting for any opening. The lizard swung its head wildly, spraying venom and lashing its tail, but Makari vanished from sight in the dust every time, appearing, striking, then gone. She used the momentum of her speed to deliver heavy blows. Her fists, though small, landed with brutal force. The lizard's thick scales began to split under the onslaught, green blood seeping out. After taking another elbow to the flank, a move she'd copied from the boss, the lizard reeled sideways and bellowed in pain. It could feel the tide turning and refused to be pressed further. Its scales bristled open to reveal dense clusters of small tentacles beneath. From those tentacles poured a cloud of toxic mists that spread out and shrouded the battlefield, cutting Makari off. She hesitated. She didn't know how potent the vapors were and dared not rush in. The corrosive pits left by its venom had already convinced her this creature's toxins were dangerous. Inside the choking fog, the lizard underwent a disturbing transformation. Its scales settled after a brief tremor, but its eyes changed in an eerie, unsettling way. The ordinary lids and pupils shivered, then its eyeballs began to bulge. In moments, new lids grew rapidly and enveloped those bulging orbs. When they opened again, the giant eyes could rotate freely, full 360 degrees, giving it a chameleon-like field of vision. The change sharpened its sight and let it track motion from any angle, a terrible tactical advantage. Outside the cloud, Makari watched cautiously, then resumed skirting it. Her fast circling stirred the toxic fog, and the airflow she generated lifted and thinned the mist, blowing it skyward. The smoke began to disperse, but the lizard remained calm like a patient hunter. Its huge, bulging eyes spun and focused, magnifying and tracking until Makari's swift figure slowly came into view. Gilgamesh and Makari were locked in fierce fights on their own fronts, and another battle was heating up nearby. Kingo and Tina had teamed up against a giant jaguar deviant. Unlike the other malformed deviants, this one looked almost normal, like a black jaguar, except it had no fur. Instead, a layer of tough cyan skin covered its body, and sharp spikes jutted from its joints like natural armor. Its muscles were clearly defined and rippled with stored power, as if it could unleash astonishing speed and strength at any moment. Just as the jaguar deviant opened its huge maw to roar, two long charged energy bolts cut through the air toward it. Kingo's attack had built them up until they were the size of basketballs. The sudden assault made the deviant clamp its jaws shut, its pupils pinched to slits. Its reaction was instant. The sinews in its forelimbs bulged, coiled like springs, and it stomped, shifting its weight sideways so the two projectiles whizzed past, almost grazing its flank. The bolts detonated behind it, the blast shearing trees in half. Tina took advantage of the opening and swept in. Her golden spear, forged from cosmic energy, flashed like lightning and slashed across the deviant's chest, carving a long wound through that thick skin. Green blood sprayed. She had aimed for the heart, but the creature's agility let it twist aside just enough to avoid a fatal strike. It howled in pain, then reared and swung a massive paw at Tina. She met it head-on, slamming up a golden shield. The impact landed with a dull thud as the paw connected with the barrier, halted midway. From a distance, Kingo continued to pound the creature with sustained support, firing another pair of energy blasts. This time the deviant couldn't dodge. The bolts struck squarely into its shoulder. The explosions shattered the bony spurs there, tearing the shoulder into a bloody ruin. Cornered and hurt, the jaguar deviant thrashed wildly, lashing with its paws and whipping its tail. Tina and Kingo worked in seamless tandem, one up close, the other covering from range, constantly opening new wounds. In one swift move, Tina shifted the spear and shield into dual blades and struck the tail, severing it cleanly. The deviant roared as if the sound itself was a wound. Despite its fearsome looks, it was actually the weakest of the three deviants here, and now faced two Eternals. It was being shredded without any effective counterattack. This front had become the most successful on the battlefield. Then Druig's voice cut through. "Kingo, Go help Makari. Kingo glanced instinctively toward Makari's position, and his stomach dropped. Makari, the speedster eternal, lay clutching her abdomen on the ground, her face paling to green. She looked poisoned. Opposite her, the aberrant race lizard had its grotesque maw open. A needle-like tongue protruded, slick with a green, corrosive liquid that dripped onto the earth and ate small pits into the soil. Kingo stared, baffled. How had Makari, faster than any of them, been struck? The lizard's tongue had obviously found its mark and injected venom. "Tina, I can handle this," she called, straining as she rose. But Tina, still braced against the jaguar, shouted back, "Kingo, go! I've got this." Kingo gave a short nod and sprinted toward Makari. Back at Makari's skirmish, Sprite had crossed her arms to shield her, spreading illusions around the wounded Eternal to buy time. The aberrant race lizard's chameleon-like eyes were exceptional. They could track fast motion and focus with uncanny precision, and for a moment, it seemed they might pierce Sprite's trickery. The lizard adjusted its gaze and locked onto a target, only it had locked onto one of Sprite's illusory Makaris. It shot its needle tongue, but the strike struck only an illusion and passed harmlessly through. Druig, unable to affect celestials or deviants with his powers this close, had already reached Makari and scooped her onto his back. He retreated toward Ajax, who moved in to treat her wounds. Kingo arrived at the scene and loosed an energy blast at the aberrant lizard. The lizard, with its precise sight, spat venom and detonated Kingo's projectile in midair before it reached. Sprite reacted, multiplying Kingo's image until many Kingos swarmed the aberrant lizard. Kingo allowed himself a small grin at the duplicate beside him. Each illusion mimicked him perfectly. Then he took off, and all the decoys ran with him. The lizard's eyes spun back and forth, searching, but the real Kingo hid among the mirages. He cupped his hands and let golden energy begin to coil inside them. This time, he didn't rush to fire. If he struck too soon, the aberrant lizard would immediately know which one was real. He intended a single, crushing blow. Every illusion seemed to charge energy in unison. The aberrant lizard continued to lash out, baring its needle tongue and spitting corrosive venom, but none of its attacks found the true target. The orb of energy in Kingo's palms spun like a golden whirlwind, growing brighter and more intense until its light became almost blinding. The sound it made hummed through the air as it gathered power, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. Chapter 371, Win One After Another. "Die, you big aberrant race lizard," Kingo shouted. The massive golden energy sphere in his hands had reached full concentration. He drew his palms back a fraction, then thrust them forward. All of his illusions mimicked the motion, and the dozen shimmering orbs shot out at once. The aberrant race lizard couldn't tell which were real and which were tricks. Its mind scrambled. In panic, it spread the scales over its body and exhaled a thick, almost liquid poisonous mist to block the incoming light projectiles. The mist did nothing against the real attack. The illusory orbs fizzed and popped like bubbles as they hit the haze, but the true golden projectile cut clean through it, dissolving the poison, and slammed into the lizard's midsection. The impact detonated into a blazing golden explosion. A huge shadow rocketed into the sky and crashed back down only seconds later. Kingo grunted, leaning on his waist to catch his breath. He felt the burn of having concentrated such a massive attack. When the dust cleared, he saw the upper half of the aberrant race lizard sprawled on the ground. The projectile had cleaved it in two. To his shock, the severed upper body was still alive, wriggling and clawing forward with its remaining forelimbs, slapping the ground and howling with a wide-open maw. Blood and organs smeared a trail behind it. Kingo swore, adrenaline surging. His hands shook, and golden light shots hammered out like a machine gun. The stream of projectiles struck the creature again and again until its skull was pulverized and even its crawling stopped. Only then did he finally exhale. A huge shadow thudded down in front of him, making Kingo jump back. He looked up. The horned deviant that had been dueling Gilgamesh had fallen from the sky, crushing what remained of the aberrant lizard. The horned beast was badly damaged. Pairs of horns snapped off, a massive arm shattered and hanging useless at its side, but it still managed to hoist itself up and pound the earth with its one intact arm, roaring furiously. It smashed the already mauled upper half into pulp. Gilgamesh charged then, each step hitting the ground like a drumbeat. With a heavy stomp, he launched himself forward and lunged at the horned deviant. He raised his palm, power condensing into a single terrible blow, and drove it into the creature's bovine mouth. The deviant screamed, its maw mangled, teeth scattering, and its bulk collapsed. Gilgamesh didn't hesitate. He seized the fallen beast and slammed his golden gauntleted fist into its head. The skull crunched. The wounded giant twitched and then stilled, life gone. He wiped gore and brain from his gauntlet and drew a breath. Though he had felled the horned deviant, he wasn't unscathed. Cuts streaked across his forehead and cheek, and golden blood oozed from the wounds beneath his armor. Phew, it's been a long time since I really stretched my body. I have indeed regressed a bit, he muttered, scanning the battlefield. His gaze found Makari, cradled in Ajak's arms and receiving healing. Ajak's self-repair energy flowed into her. The bruises on her face were already fading. Gilgamesh felt a measure of relief and turned his attention to the last remaining enemy. The jaguar deviant, the one that had first tangled with Kingo and Tina, was left facing Tina alone. Compared to the horned deviant, it had never been powerful, and it couldn't spew venom like the aberrant race lizard. Its only edge was speed, but Tina's reflexes far outmatched it. She blocked and parried with surgical precision, countering with blades that flashed each time the deviant lunged. Now the jaguar lay scarred and bleeding, its black hide matted with green ichor. One of Tina's slashes had removed a portion of its skull at an angle, exposing brain tissue, but deviants were stubbornly tenacious and still clung to life. Seeing its fallen companions, the jaguar's breath came ragged and panicked. With a howl of fury and fear, it spun and tried to flee the battlefield. Tina reformed her twin blades into a spear with a practiced flick, preparing to throw and stop its escape. Before she could release it, a golden light blossomed high in the sky. Chapter 372, Intruder. The jaguar deviant, badly wounded by Tina, staggered and fled into the dense woods. Driven by raw survival instinct, it ran with blistering speed despite the injuries. Before Tina could close the distance, a brilliant light ripped through the sky. Two golden beams descended and struck the fleeing creature dead on. The deviant had no time to react. The searing energy poured through its body, blowing it apart from the inside. Most of its flesh melted away. The remaining fragments of its corpse spattered across the clearing. Tina stopped, stunned, looking up toward the source of the light. Everyone else did the same, drawn by the sudden arrival and by a strange, familiar quality to the glow. Noah, who had been observing from the sidelines, raised an eyebrow. He recognized the newcomer, though the figure's appearance had changed enough to be unsettling. Ikaris, the Eternal in blue armor, descended from high above. He glowed faintly with a golden light. His descent looked less like a landing than a godly apparition cloaked in a halo. Noah, who had been waiting behind the group, stepped forward slowly. Ikaris's face had been impassive as he came down, intent on making a dramatic entrance to assert authority over his kin. But when he noticed Noah, something in his posture shifted. He halted his descent and hovered, even showing a subtle tendency to rise again. Ikaris hadn't expected to encounter Noah. Aurelion the judge's warning, "Be careful of the human who had defeated him," was still fresh in his mind. Noah was not only powerful, but had once wielded infinity stones. He was not someone to be confronted lightly. Ikaris didn't want to risk a direct clash. His mission from Aurelion was to stall Ajak's plans until the judge himself arrived. He wasn't there to engage in a needless duel. After whatever enhancement Aurelion had granted him, Ikaris had gained a stronger cosmic core and some ability to sense other Eternals, though less finely tuned than Ajak's. He had flown around the planet at speeds satellites couldn't track, found this location, and intended to assert control. Encountering Noah instead complicated everything. He wouldn't throw himself away for nothing. Below, the Eternals gathered. Makari, severely wounded earlier, rose, surprisingly spirited. A small tear in her abdominal armor marked where the giant lizard's tongue had struck. Ajak moved to the front, her expression hard as she took in Ikaris's changed demeanor. Kingo, who had been ready to greet him with a smile, straightened at Ajak's lead. Even those who hadn't suspected betrayal found themselves wary. Ikaris now stood in opposition. Circe and Sprite watched with particular intensity. Cersei remembered their past intimacy, the centuries they had spent together before Ikaris suddenly left without explanation, and the sudden sight of him now, positioned against her, tightened something in her chest. Sprite's feelings were quieter and more complicated. She'd long harbored a secret crush on the powerful, handsome Ikaris, and the idea of abandoning the group to join him flickered through her mind, even as insecurity kept her from voicing it. Everyone felt the difference in him. The twin beams that had just destroyed the Deviant had been far more powerful than anything Ikaris had used before. Noah, who moved to stand beside Karen, the most avid observer of them all, her camera always in hand, had already felt the change. He checked himself to steady his breathing and then fixed his gaze on Ikaris. The cosmic energy emanating from Ikaris was far stronger than during their last encounter, and the Mind Stone residue Noah had left inside Ikaris had vanished. Noah's mind raced. Where had Ikaris acquired such power, and how had the Infinity Stone energy been cleared? Ikaris's voice answered that question. "Ajak," he called, radiance flickering in his eyes like an imminent volley of light. "Arishem the judge has commanded me to stop your plan. He will descend upon Earth himself to pass judgment on the planet and on all of you. Friends, it is not too late to withdraw. I will plead your case before Arishem." He spoke with the authority of someone carrying direct orders from above. The light in his gaze made everyone instinctively draw back a little, bracing for a strike. Cersei, the cry that came from her was equal parts incredulity and pain. She stepped forward, unable to keep silent. "Ikaris, can you really stand by and watch humanity perish?" At the sound of her name, the hard edge in Ikaris's expression softened. The luminous energy around him slackened as if some internal pressure eased. For a moment, the only thing in his face was the old, complicated sorrow. Cersei. Chapter 373. Take Action, Cersei. Ikaris looked at his former lover, his face a tangle of emotions. For a moment he hesitated, then his expression hardened. "This is a necessary sacrifice, Cersei. It's for the expansion of the universe, for the birth of more life. That is the purpose of our existence." "No, Ikaris," Cersei shook her head. "That may be your purpose, but I don't exist for anyone, neither for some blasted mission nor for Arishem the judge. I live for myself." Druig, standing nearby, stepped forward. "She's right," he said. "I won't be anyone's instrument." Ikaris's eyes flashed at the sight of Druig. The two had always been rivals among the Eternals. If he could, Ikaris would have gladly sent him to his death. Kingo, in the crowd, watched with a complicated expression. He did not agree with Ikaris's plan, but the idea of opposing Arishem and Ikaris filled him with dread. That unease had been with him ever since Ajak revealed the truth. He'd been tempted to walk away, go live out his last days and await the emergence, rather than make enemies of powers he could not defeat. Before Kingo could decide, Gilgamesh stepped forward beside him and addressed Ikaris directly. "Ikaris, abandon this. None of us will let you destroy Earth. Besides, all the suffering Thena suffered was because of the Celestials. Don't think we'll side with you." Gilgamesh's booming voice steadied Kingo's resolve. Ikaris drew a deep breath. Anger flared across his face. "Fine. Since you've chosen, take care of yourselves. I won't let any of you jeopardize the emergence." Cosmic energy rippled over Ikaris's body, lighting him from within. The Eternals below braced themselves, expecting he would strike. Noah then walked to the front of the crowd and called up to him, casual in his approach. "Ikaris, come down and talk. I'm curious where you got that power." A cold sweat broke out among the Eternals behind Noah. Except for Gilgamesh, Thena, and Ajak, none of them had seen what Noah could do. They worried his provocation might be dangerous. Strangely, instead of charging, Ikaris took a step back as Noah advanced. Druig laughed and taunted. "Are you scared?" A barb meant to humiliate him in front of Cersei. Humiliation stung. Ikaris could not stand being mocked before his former lover. He was wary of Noah's unknown strength, but cowardice was not in his nature. If he did not act, he would lose face and perhaps discover how powerful this human truly was. Without warning, Ikaris attacked. A golden beam of light shot from his eyes toward Noah, an immense lash of cosmic energy moving faster than the others could react. But Noah did not flinch. A blue teleportation portal opened in front of him and swallowed the ray. At the same time, another portal appeared beside Ikaris. The beam reemerged through it, and whistled past Icaris as he narrowly shifted his body, the edge of it grazing him. The redirected blast slammed into the ground a short distance away. Boom! The impact tore open the earth. A shockwave kicked up dust and debris, and everyone present felt the raw force of Icaris's power, far greater than any display they had seen from him before. Noah made a hand magic circle, the rings of Ragador, at the ready. Blue energy whips unfurled from the circle and lashed at Icaris. The Eternal moved with speed, evading most of the whips, but one coiled around his wrist and locked him. Icaris's face went white. Arisham's warning echoed in his mind. Mind Stone, mental control. Panic flared. He yanked at the energy whip, trying to break free, and began to thrust himself upward, attempting to fly away. Noah felt the tug. Icaris was potent, more than a mere homelander, perhaps now comparable to a Superman. Noah channeled more magic into his grip to anchor himself against the pull, then seized the energy whip with both hands and heaved. Icaris's surprise flashed across his face before he was dragged downward. The ground rushed up to meet him. Bang! Icaris slammed into the earth, swallowed by dust and debris. Chapter 374. Fight. Beat. Ik again. Bang! Noah hauled Icaris out of the sky, and the Eternal crashed hard to the ground. Dust billowed up around him, hiding his form. Sizzle! No clear silhouette emerged, but the sound of energy cutting through the smoke rang out. Noah felt the connection of his energy whip snap as if something had broken away from Icaris. He dismissed the magic circle still glowing in his palm. A long sword appeared in his hand like a work of art, its white blade inlaid with ornate golden patterns. It was Magic Cut, a long sword evolved from the magic sect and the first weapon Noah had ever forged. It amplified his magic, making attacks launched through the blade far stronger than those he could produce empty-handed. Lately, Noah had rarely used the weapons in his pack. The enemies he'd faced recently rarely required them, but he still kept several powerful melee weapons on hand. Magic Cut, Storm Razor, the Electrocution Blade, the Guardian Angel Longsword, Resurrection Armor, and an electric-sensitive three-wheeled blade. Magic Cut felt most natural to him, so when he reached for a weapon, it was the one he summoned. Peering through the thick dust, Noah gripped Magic Cut and casually swung. A razor wind sliced out from the blade, cutting the dust and striking into the cloud where Icaris was hiding. Humph! Icaris threw a punch. Cosmic energy coalesced around his fist and shattered the incoming blade of wind. Rage filled his eyes. He clenched his armored fists and charged Noah directly. In that moment, he cared about nothing but imprinting his fist on that hated human's face, Infinity Stones forgotten. The blow he prepared was terrifyingly powerful. With the speed of his flight added, it was the kind of strike that could severely wound or even kill Gilgamesh in a single hit. At the moment, Icaris was the strongest among them. Clang! Metal met metal as Icaris's armored fist slammed into Magic Cut. Sparks exploded, but Noah's feet were rooted like the roots of an ancient tree. The collision produced an impact far greater than the one they had seen when Gilgamesh fought the Minotaur. Every Eternal felt danger flare. Instinctively, Gilgamesh crossed his arms to brace his chest. Tina conjured a golden shield to protect Ajak, Circe, and Sprite. Makari flickered into extreme speed and scooped up the lone civilian, Karen, and the unarmored druid, whisking them to safety. Kingo tried to copy Gilgamesh and crossed his arms, but without Gilgamesh's bulk, the force still sent him reeling. Wherever the impact rolled, it lifted sand and rubble as though the earth itself were heaving. Village buildings crumbled. More than half the settlement was destroyed in an instant. Gilgamesh was shoved backward until 2 furrows split the ground under his feet. Tina's shield took the brunt for her charge group. She gritted her teeth but held. Kingo, however, was knocked flying. The shockwave slammed toward the house where townspeople had been hiding. At the last instant, a wall of wind sprang up and took the impact full on, neutralizing its force. Noah had seen the danger and, after shaking Icaris off, had slashed the air to unleash the wind barrier. The druid, watching from a distance, felt his chest unclench. His eyes were wide, not just with relief, but with a freshly kindled fury. The villagers he'd been protecting had nearly been killed inside that house. He swallowed the fear and let anger burn, but knew this was no time to lose control. His pupils glowed, and he used his power while the wind wall still stood. directing the villagers to flee the house and run toward him. The other Eternals were uninjured. Even Kingo, despite being knocked airborne, suffered little damage thanks to his eternal armor. But the message was clear. Ikaris had grown stronger. He was no longer the comrade they had known. Zzz! After being shaken off, Ikaris hovered, releasing two thick beams of light again. He kept firing them as he dove down toward Noah. This time, Noah did not open a teleportation gate. He gripped Magic Cut and transformed himself into a streak of sword light, moving to meet the lasers. Wrapped in swift sword chi, he intersected the beams. As the cosmic eye rays neared, they were cleaved and dissolved by the blade energy. Ikaris poured more power into the beams, thickening and intensifying them. Then he raised his right fist, preparing a crushing melee strike as he closed the gap. Noah thrust Magic Cut forward. He moved with a speed that felt like teleportation and appeared in front of Ikaris. A sword slash cut through him. Wind rushed from the blade and struck Ikaris. His fist froze mid-raise. The eye beams ceased. For a moment, it was as if some strange force had locked him in the air, robbing him of any ability to react. Last breath? Noah swung again, an upward diagonal slash that broke Ikaris's frozen posture. Then came several rapid slashes, each carrying the swiftness of sword chi. A flurry Noah called last breath. Ikaris could do nothing but take them, suspended and helpless. The final heavy downward stroke sent him tumbling out of the air, and he hit the ground, sprawled and weak. The Eternals watching from below had no idea what had just happened. One moment, Noah had become a lance of white light, tipped in gold, and shot straight into the sky. The next, he blinked out of sight. Then he reappeared beside Ikaris, his form strobing so fast that each flicker sent a blade of light slicing into Ikaris. With every strike, Ikaris fell farther, finally crashing into the earth. When the last sword wind faded, the pressure left in its wake made everyone nearby feel breathless. Trees and grass bowed under the force as if they might be ripped from the ground. Ikaris lay on his back in a massive crater, staring blankly at the sky. His eternal battle armor was webbed with cracks. His chest was torn open in a deep gash, golden blood oozing from the wound. The image took him back to his last encounter with Noah. After all the power he had gained, why had he been reduced to this again? It burned in him, anger and disbelief. Noah descended slowly, calming the cosmic energy that thrummed around him, and landed at Ikaris's side. It was clear, Ikaris had grown strong, but Noah had ended him in an instant by calling on the power of the Resolve rune. Noah had been curious about the source of Ikaris's leap in strength. What extraordinary encounter had brought it about? He had learned the truth from Ikaris's own confession. Aurelion, the judge of the Celestials, had bestowed power on him and sent him to stop Ajax and the others. From what Ikaris had said, Noah also suspected Aurelion could not personally descend to Earth immediately. Why the judge delayed was unknown, but it bought Noah time to prepare, and perhaps to strike at the god in the Earth's core before Aurelion could intervene. As for Ikaris, Noah reassessed him. Letting Ikaris go before had been a gamble based on the hope he would return to the Eternals. Now, having spoken with Aurelion, Ikaris was unlikely to come back. If Noah had not chanced upon Ajax today, Ikaris's plan might have succeeded, subduing Ajax and her group and handing them over to Aurelion for judgment. Noah could not allow that. Killing Ikaris felt wasteful. Noah had a different idea, the Mind Stone. If he could wrest control of Ikaris's will, he would gain a powerful Eternal permanently at his command. But they were not alone. Other Eternals and villagers watched. If Noah openly controlled one of their own, panic and rage would spread. They would wonder who would be next. He could, of course, conceal the control afterward, make it look as if Ikaris had simply been subdued. Calculating the risks, Noah made his decision. Ikaris still drifted in a stunned haze. Noah used the moment. With a snap of power, he teleported the Mind Stone from the laboratory to his hand. It pulsed in his palm and then reached out, an invisible psychic needle probing Ikaris's mind. Ikaris had been looking at the sky when that foreign force slid into him. His limbs stiffened, his body felt detached from his will. A new thought began to seed itself. Obedience, a desire to serve the man at his side. The sensation flashed like a memory. Aurelion had warned him about the Mind Stone. Mind Stone? No, he could not be made to bend. Panic flared. Ikaris fought, summoning the cosmic energy left in him. The energy surged, flaring against the invading influence. For a heartbeat, he rested his mind back. Celestials could resist the Infinity Stones. The powers Aurelion had granted him let him push the Mind Stone's reach back, at least for a while. But Icarus was not a celestial in full, only a man gifted. He could delay the invasion, not stop it. With what remained of his strength, he took a single, desperate action. Light began to pour from him, brilliant and fierce, as if he meant to annihilate himself rather than be turned into a puppet. Noah's eyes widened for an instant. Then he raised a guardian shield, a barrier woven from cosmic energy and the Resolve rune to protect the Eternals and villagers standing behind him. The blinding radiance struck the shield and was contained. Those behind Noah were safe. Even as Noah breathed the relief of success, the story changed. The light did not herald Icarus's death. With a violent cry, the gravely wounded Eternal shot upward. He moved so fast that no one could track him. By the time Noah had looked up, Icarus's silhouette had already vanished into the vault of the sky. Noah watched the place where Icarus had disappeared, the Mind Stone still warm in his hand. The scene felt painfully familiar, but this time he promised himself it would not end the same way. Icarus would not slip away again. Chapter 376. You run, I chase. The Eternal watched Icarus fall and then saw Noah descend from the sky. Only then did he dare to approach. Everyone else stood stunned as well. Having sparred with Noah before, Gilgamesh finally understood how much Noah had held back in their previous match. The others, witnessing Noah's overwhelming power, began to accept what Ajax had been saying. Even a celestial as powerful as Icarus could be felled so quickly by this human. Just as they were about to move forward to check on Icarus, a blinding light erupted from the spot where he had fallen. It was like the sun at noon, so intense everyone instinctively shielded their eyes. When the glare finally subsided and they dared to look, the scene filled them with dread. A vast swath of land, several hundred meters across, had been razed to nothing. The earth was scorched black, not a blade of grass remained. Trees, flowers, and buildings had evaporated under the shockwave of energy, leaving only barren ruin. The nearby village had been turned to ruins. "What the hell happened?" Kingo blurted out. Before anyone could demand answers from Noah, who was standing nearby, he vanished in a flash of blue light. When they hurried to the impact site, there was no sign of Icarus either. "Ajax, what now?" they asked. Ajax frowned, staring at the crater and then up at the sky. She was puzzled too, but she suspected Noah had taken off to pursue Icarus. After a quick assessment of the damage, she decided to handle their immediate responsibilities first. "I don't know what Noah is after," she said. "We need to deal with what's here. Druig, this village is no longer habitable. Find somewhere else for the villagers to go. We'll help." Druig looked over the ruined village and nodded, silent and grim. Far from them, after attempting to seize control of Icarus, Noah had penetrated him with the Mind Stone's power. Normally, once the Mind Stone took hold, a target became a puppet, obeying Noah utterly. This time, to Noah's surprise, Icarus had resisted. He'd broken free of some of the Mind Stone's control and regained portions of his autonomy. Noah had never seen the Mind Stone fail like that. It wasn't that Icarus was immune, Noah didn't believe that, but the Celestials were different. Only a force on their level could contend with the Infinity Stones. The moment Icarus reclaimed his body, he detonated a flash of light and vanished at incredible speed, streaking beyond the atmosphere. Noah felt certain Icarus had reached near light speed. In an instant, the trace of him slipped out of Noah's immediate senses. This mirrored Noah's previous encounter with Icarus, except last time, Noah had let him escape on purpose. This time, he would not. The energy Noah had injected into Icarus with the Mind Stone hadn't completely dissipated. That lingering resonance gave Noah a connection to his quarry. He summoned the Space Stone and began to teleport in rapid succession. After the first jump, he found himself outside Earth. The blue planet hovered behind him, and the moon hung distant. Out in space, Noah's body glowed with blue magic as he tuned himself to Icarus's trail. The Mind Stone answered his intent, and a yellow line of light extended ahead of him, continuous, pointing like an arrow toward the depths of the cosmos. "Is that your route, Icarus?" Noah muttered, and leapt along the trail. At first his jumps were cautious and short. He wasn't sure if Icarus might change course mid-flight, but after several hops, he realized the escape trajectory was a straight line. Confident, he widened the range of his teleportations. A flash of blue, and Noah blinked into the vacuum further out. He blinked again, and the yellow trail was gone. Had he overjumped and missed him? Noah scanned the emptiness. Earth was a tiny dot of blue in the distance, other planets pinpricks. Closer to him was a red world. Given his angle and the absence of the sun in that direction, it could be only one place. He seemed to be within Jupiter's orbit, but Jupiter itself sat on the far side of the sun. The Mind Stone's light flickered, nudging him toward the red planet. Mars hung before him. "I found you, Icarus," Noah said. Chapter 377, Smash Varudo. Above Mars, a golden light like a meteor tore through the thin atmosphere and slammed into the red soil. Boom! Where the light struck, a crater opened. It wasn't a rock that had fallen from the sky, but Icarus. He lay in the pit, gasping. Mars has an atmosphere with oxygen, but it's far thinner than Earth's. The air felt sparse and biting. Icarus was in a sorry state. Most of his blue battle armor had been burned to gold by the blood seeping from his wounds. The armor, forged by heaven, was riddled with cracks. He'd been gravely wounded and had fled here once more. He wasn't sure why he'd chosen this spot to recover. Maybe because he had healed here before, or because after meeting Arishem the judge, this place had taken on a strange significance. Now he lay in the crater thinking about his next move and how to fulfill the mission Arishem had given him. The power of that human had been too great beyond anything Icarus had imagined. He had believed that with Arishem's gift, he would be strong enough to contend with any mortal. He still thought that way until the clash with Noah on Earth. When Noah wielded the Mind Stone, Icarus had been wary, but he hadn't expected to collapse at a single touch. So now, he could only try to heal here and find another plan. As Icarus stared up at the endless stars and tried to stitch his wounds with whatever energy remained in his body, a blue light flickered across the sky. A figure he did not want to see had arrived, Noah's perspective. Noah had been tracking the Mind Stone's trail to follow Icarus's escape. He'd misjudged a teleport and overshot, popping out near Saturn's orbit. Before he obtained the Space Stone, Noah could only teleport as far as the moon using Kamartaj's gates, a distance that had grown with his training. After claiming the Space Stone, he could traverse the entire solar system at will. The range was far greater than that, and with mastery over it, he knew one day he might span the whole universe. Realizing he'd gone too far, Noah corrected course and locked onto Mars. The Space Stone contracted the space before him, and in an instant he appeared above the red planet. He's here," Noah murmured, spotting the faint yellow trace, the leftover residue of Mind Stone energy that marked Icarus. It was proof the Eternal was on Mars. Noah fixed on the signature and used the Space Stone again. A flash of blue, and Noah materialized in the sky over the crater. He saw Icarus in the pit below. The Eternal's gaze swung up to him, and his expression shifted. Icarus began to gather energy, preparing to repeat his old trick, an attempt to outrun his pursuer as he had on Earth. He was fast, and he believed Noah wouldn't be able to catch him this time either. He didn't have time to wonder how the human kept finding him. After this escape, he planned to leave the solar system entirely and vanish into distant galaxies where he assumed Noah could never follow. He was wrong. Noah had been fooled once before because Icarus's speed had far exceeded his expectations. He would not be fooled twice. The Space Stone in Noah's hand flared brilliant blue. From him the light radiated outward and spread across Mars, forming a broad, shimmering field over the crimson sand like a strange, silent lake. Even from orbit, the blue sheet was visible. Wherever it passed, the sand halted in mid-arc, the wind stilled, and the thin Martian air seemed to be arrested. It looked as if time itself had frozen, but it wasn't time at work. It was space being reshaped. The Space Stone's power had solidified the environment. Molecules held in place, motion arrested, everything turned into a tableau. Everything except the wielder of the Space Stone. Noah hung at the center of that frozen space and looked down at Icarus. He kept the sphere's radiance burning, maintaining the stasis. Icarus, who had been preparing to bolt on speed alone, found himself rooted to the spot. Not a single inch of movement was possible. If molecules were stopped, Noah thought, a mind couldn't function properly either. If the brain's chemistry was frozen, thought would follow. Noah drifted down to the desolate surface of Mars. Despite the stasis, his boots sank into the sand and left a fresh print. The frozen scene still responded to him. He could interact with it as he pleased. He stepped to the crater's edge and peered at Icarus. Around the Eternal, strands of energy he'd been trying to unleash hung motionless in the air, an attempt at a blinding burst now captured mid-release. Noah reached out, touched one of those suspended energies, and simply pushed it aside. Icarus stared with wide eyes, a storm of emotion, surprise, terror, anger, flickering across his face in a single frozen instant. Those were the expressions he had managed before the stasis took hold. Noah moved closer. Then he released the power of the Mind Stone again. Chapter 378, Control. Noah held the Mind Stone and let its power to manipulate minds flow again. Yellow energy drifted from his hand and seeped into every part of Icarus's body. This time, the Celestial's power could not help Icarus resist the Mind Stone. Their energy had been solidified by the Space Stone and could no longer function as before. A flash of yellow crossed Icarus's wide pupils and slowly deepened to blue. Under the Mind Stone's invasion, Icarus became its slave. He would regard Noah as his master and obey every command. Noah paced a few steps, checking for any anomalies. After a few seconds, he nodded, satisfied, and released the surrounding spatial stasis. The blue halo contracted until all the energy folded back into the Space Stone in Noah's hand. The air began to move again. Wind picked up and sand driven by it rolled across the surface. Everything returned to normal. Icarus, who had been about to unleash his power, deflated as the spatial rewind completed. His deep blue pupils flickered, then he climbed to his feet and stood before Noah. He knelt on one knee in submission. "Master," Icarus said flatly. Noah frowned. It felt strange for a grown man to call him master. He motioned for a change. "Don't call me master. Use something else, my lord or sir." "Understood, sir," Icarus replied, lowering his head. He then straightened and stood before Noah, waiting for orders. "All right, Icarus, let's talk," Noah said. With the Mind Stone controlling him, Icarus was a conscious puppet. He revered Noah above all, but otherwise retained himself. Noah could, if he wished, switch him into a mindless puppet as he had done with the Hydra agents. "Yes, sir." "Icarus, what mission did Aurelion the judge give you?" Noah asked. "After Aurelion bestowed new power upon me, he gave me a mission," Icarus replied expressionlessly. "Because of certain matters, Aurelion can't reach Earth quickly, so he instructed me to return to Earth to stop Ajax and their project, to prevent their plan to terminate the emergence." Noah nodded. That matched what he had suspected. Aurelion wouldn't immediately come to Earth to stop Ajax. Something had delayed him. Noah didn't know why, but the delay was good news. It bought them time to deal with the Celestial at Earth's core, perhaps before Aurelion arrived. "Icarus, did Aurelion say when he'd arrive?" Noah asked, hand on his chin. "No, sir." "I see." Noah thought through the implications. He would have to stay on Earth until Aurelion showed up. That meant postponing his plans to travel the universe and hunt the Infinity Stones. With the Celestials effectively a ticking bomb, Earth couldn't be left unattended. If Aurelion arrived while Noah was away, the planet might already be destroyed before he returned. "Let's wait and see. When we get back, we'll find that Celestial in Earth's core first," Noah decided, then looked at Icarus. The current Icarus could not be paraded before the Eternals. Noah planned to tell them he had failed to capture Icarus and had already left the solar system. Icarus himself would be kept hidden for now. Noah thought his island base would be ideal, where he could also keep Dr. Banner company. Later, after the events ended and the Eternals traveled the universe as in the original plan, Icarus would be free to move about Earth. His strength made him a perfect asset for Noah's purposes. Noah waved his hand and opened a teleportation portal to Earth from the barren plain of Mars. The portal opened slower than usual because of the immense distance. Unlike a single spatial leap, forming a stable portal required more effort. The opening showed only a shimmering blue field, a barrier Noah had deliberately left in place to prevent any stray pathogens or radiation from Mars from entering his base. "Icarus, go through and wait on the other side for my orders. Dr. Banner there is my friend," Noah said, nodding toward the portal. "Yes." Icarus remained expressionless and stepped into the blue. Noah watched him go, then closed the portal. He wondered how Dr. Banner would react when a battle-scarred man in tattered armor suddenly appeared in the base. But Icarus was no longer a mindless puppet. He ought to introduce himself. Noah activated the space stone and locked its destination onto that distant azure planet. A flash of blue light passed, and then both he and Icarus were gone, leaving only a few footprints in the dust and a large pit nearby. Those traces would be little mysteries for future explorers of Mars. Everything else returned to stillness as the stone's energies withdrew. Noah carried the burden of what came next. Chapter 379. Village Follow-Up. Noah had settled the matter with Icarus. The encounter had gone surprisingly smoothly. Aside from Icarus's brief resistance to the Mind Stone's influence, there had been no further complications. Noah had expected Aurelion the Judge to appear and prevent him from exercising control, but the Celestial's presence never manifested. Noah had imagined Aurelion stepping in like an ancestor in a cultivation tale to help wayward descendants, but perhaps Icarus was not important enough in Aurelion's eyes. After all, the Eternal were Aurelion's creations. If one Icarus fell, Aurelion could theoretically make another. Still, Noah reminded himself that creating an Eternal was unlikely to be trivial. Otherwise, the universe would be swarming with them, and deviants would never have been able to hinder the birth of a god. In any case, the immediate crisis with Icarus had ended. Noah had subdued him long enough to leave, and in the aftermath, Icarus had fled, far beyond the solar system, beyond the Milky Way. Noah made sure Icarus could not return to the island base before the others left, so the chance of a reunion was minimal. Back on Earth, deep in the Amazon, Ajax and the others were helping the Druid deal with the aftermath of the ruined village. The settlement had already been through two terrible events, the Eternal versus Deviant battle, and then the clash between Noah and Icarus. The village lay in ruins, but most of the people were unharmed. The Druid had removed them from the conflict and hidden them safely while the Deviants attacked. Now that the villagers had been released from his control, they stood bewildered amid the wreckage, asking how their homes could have disappeared so quickly. Circe, Sprite, and Tina were sent among the people to comfort them and explain what had happened. The villagers had lived with the Druid for generations and already suspected he was no ordinary man. He never aged and had always been their guardian. When the trio told them the truth, they accepted it more readily than outsiders might have. The Druid's word carried weight. Ajax was talking with the Druid about what to do next. The village was badly damaged and not immediately habitable. The central question was whether to abandon the site and rebuild elsewhere, or to rebuild on the same ground. Ajax worried that since the Deviants had tracked them here once, they might return if the villagers left. The Druid, who had lived with these people for centuries, argued otherwise. Ajax, he said, looking up at her, these people have roots here. Their lives are tied to this land. Leaving won't be easy for them. The Deviants came because we drew their attention. If we stay and rebuild, they will stop hunting these villagers once we move on. Ajax listened, and after considering his experience and authority, agreed. The Druid was the village's true master. His opinion deserved deference. In the end, she announced they would rebuild on the original site and that the Eternal would stay temporarily to help. With each of them lending their unique abilities, reconstruction would be faster and safer. No one objected. The scene felt like a page from the distant past, when the Eternal once strode beside humanity, fighting with them, protecting them, helping to raise settlements. It was a quiet cycle of history repeating itself. It was bittersweet. Icarus and Phastos, who had once stood with them, were gone. As the group discussed how best to use their powers in the reconstruction, a flicker of blue light appeared among the ruins not far away. Everyone turned. Noah materialized in the glow. His arrival fell the camp into a brief silence. His composure was unchanged, but the absence of Icarus was noted immediately. Ajax stepped forward. "Noah," she asked, "have you handled Icarus?" "No," Noah said, then amended, "or more or less." He met her eyes. He resisted at first, but there were no major complications. In the end, he left. Ajax's expression tightened. "Left? He escaped," Noah said. "He's gone from the solar system, beyond the Milky Way. He probably won't come back to Earth. From now on, you should focus on the deviance and the emergence. Relief and unease warred across Ajak's face. It was better, she told herself, that he had gone, no longer an ally on a different path, but his disappearance still left a hollow. Noah nodded and asked, "What are your plans?" "We'll rebuild the village here," Ajak replied. "These people have nowhere else to go. They need our help." Noah glanced at the ruined dwellings, then at the villagers already preparing to salvage what they could. "Good," he said. "Hand me that deviant detector. I want to start tracking the deviant's whereabouts." Ajak finally handed the bronze bracer to Noah. He took it, turning the device over in his hands, feeling that its weight was like ordinary bronze. But this seemingly simple bracer could scan for traces of deviance. Noah planned to study the Eternal Scanner once he returned, see if he could broaden its detection range and use it to round up deviance. He remembered the detector Phastos held in the films. It could scan for deviance across vast distances. It might not have been perfectly accurate, otherwise so many deviants wouldn't still be resurfacing now. After Noah left, Ajak told the others what he had said. The mood among the Eternals was complicated. Akaris had been their companion for millennia, and his sudden departure weighed on everyone, especially Cersei, who had once loved him. Emotions ran high and couldn't be settled quickly. Sprite, who'd just decided to follow Ikaris, found herself unmoored when he didn't return. She abandoned her plan. Still, they put those feelings aside and helped the villagers rebuild. With eternal abilities and inhuman strength, their work moved far faster than any human crew. Cersei reformed pulverized building materials, restoring walls and timbers to their original intact states. Makari delivered supplies in seconds with blinding speed. The others worked alongside villagers, lifting beams, setting foundations, repairing roofs. This was a village they had built once before. With the Eternals' help, homes would be restored quickly. "Why are we stuck cleaning up this mess?" Kingo complained, holding his nose as he stood beside a pile of deviant corpses. Ajak had assigned him and Gilgamesh to dispose of the bodies. If the corpses remained too long, they could sicken or even mutate the villagers, a lesson learned the hard way long ago. "Don't whine. We've done it before," Gilgamesh said, clapping Kingo so hard the man staggered. "I haven't seen deviants in ages," Kingo said, fanning his nose. The recent corpses already gave off a foul smell. The pile included a horned deviant and an aberrant lizard. The odor came mostly from the lizard. Its internal fluids had leaked out after death, corroding the horned deviant until it was barely recognizable. "Enough talk. Let's get to work," Gilgamesh said, and they stepped forward. Hundreds of years hadn't erased those instincts. For the Eternals, cleaning up former enemies was almost automatic. "Wait, what's this?" Kingo suddenly said. He held a small black object he had found on a relatively intact limb of the horned deviant and inspected it. It didn't look organic, it looked manufactured. "What did you find?" Gilgamesh asked, leaning in. "This looks like a camera," Kingo said in surprise. They brought it to Ajak. She had been thinking about Phastos' funeral. His coffin was still untouched in the previous room, the battle having spared it, and paused when Kingo and Gilgamesh approached with the black device. Ajak's face shifted from curiosity to concern as Kingo explained. She listened, then fell silent, deep in thought. Elsewhere, in Alaska, at the oil plant where Noah and Akaris had first clashed, the site lay silent and abandoned. The workers had long ago been slaughtered by deviants. Inside a room full of computer equipment, a figure stood before several monitors. On the screens, multiple scenes played. If the Eternals had seen them, they would have recognized the footage as their own battle in the Amazon, shown from the first-person perspective of the deviants. The figure before the screens was Crow, the deviant who had absorbed Phastos' cosmic energy. He no longer moved with the animalistic posture of his kind. Standing upright, his form now looked human. After taking in Phastos' power, Crow had evolved into a more advanced humanoid state. In the films, Crow reached this form only after continuously absorbing energies from Ajak and Gilgamesh. Phastos' ability was different. By absorbing Phastos' power, Crow had gained a measure of that intellect, allowing a more direct leap to this shape. But the transition had limits. Crow's current strength didn't match the version seen in the movies, where he combined Ajak's regenerative abilities with Gilgamesh's brute force. He had the mind and a human-like form now, but not the full complement of powers he might have had. He watched the Amazon footage intently, the camera feeds playing the battle from his people's eyes, as if studying how the Eternals fought them.